Uh, Good afternoon, and today we shall be starting a brief talk on Sigmund Freud. Freud, a doctor, a psychoanalyst in that sense, but Freud is also a part and parcel of literature, humanities. Since Freud's contribution to psychoanalysis as a study of discussion has made him an integral part of humanities, and particularly in the case of literature, because the characters we have, the mind of the characters, that should be read, that should be deciphered through the approaches that Sigmund Freud helped us to know in his theories, in his ideas, and all the different experiments that he made in his long career. Sigmund Freud's career is illustrious and a very promising career that he had. A man of continuous research. Now, if you go to any particular bookstore and to seek for the number of publications of Sigmund Freud, so it is really create an awe if we look for the kind of huge collection of writing that Sigmund Freud could produce in his long, busy career as a psychiatrist. Sigmund Freud, what is interesting before we move in details of some of the trajectories, some of the aspects of Sigmund Freud as a thinker, Sigmund Freud as a doctor, Sigmund Freud as a psychiatrist. The most important thing is that he continued his writing career, and all the experiments that he made in his long career, he jotted them down as several cases. And those cases were thought, reread, and reinterpreted by him. And he continuously wanted to introspect on those particular cases that he attended to in his career as a researcher, as a scientist at the same time. Sigmund Freud, naturally a part of literature as well, as he is a part of any other branches where we deal with human mind, where we deal with human psychology. This man, this thinker, was born in 1856 and he passed away in 1939. But the two places were different. He was born in the then Czech Republic, and the name of the place, Moravia, and he passed away in London, England. And this long phase and the kind of particular branch of knowledge of which he is basically considered as the founder that we know today as psychoanalysis. Now, if we go for a very straightforward statement that what does psychoanalysis mean? What exactly psychoanalysis in a nutshell? So apparently or directly we can go for such kind of statement that it is basically, it deals with treating the nervous disorder. It's a particular method of treatment. Psychoanalysis is a particular method of treatment for nervous disorders. If this is one part of the approach of psychoanalysis, on the other part, it is a science of the unconscious mental processes. Sigmund Freud dedicated himself for the promoting and to developing this branch of knowledge to go deeper of the human mind. What actually is happening over there? What are the reasons of some of the not easily aspects of human behavior that cannot be interpreted so easily, that may seem to us very bizarre, that for some rest of the people, they don't find any meaningful explanation of some of the behaviors. Sigmund Freud dedicated his life in researches for finding out that secrets of human behavioral conditions and positions. So, on the other hand, psychoanalysis is more about a science of unconscious. It is a kind of a process that deals about what is happening inside that mental journey. And naturally, for that particular reason, we call it a depth psychology, because it goes deeper. And the more we go for Sigmund Freud, we shall be introduced to some of those very popular terms which are basically attached to him: id, ego, and superego. And human mind is that he basically uses the particular time, human psyche. It is something that cannot be measured. It has that immeasurable possibilities, almost like a kind of an iceberg floating over the sea. That is something like human mind, of which a tiny portion is visible outside and the rest of the portion submerged under the sea level, sea water level. So if this is the condition of human mind, so human mind has so many zones, so many areas that cannot be interpreted so easily. It requires time, it requires dedication, it requires wholehearted experimentations, and then only gradually we can at least can be there to touch what are the secrets, what are the aspects happening over there. To reach that destination, Sigmund Freud had to go through a long process, in a long journey. Today's talk will be a little bit of that trajectory, of all those paths that he had to cross, because Freud as a thinker, that never happened all on a sudden. Rather, the kind of environment he was the product of, the kind of people he met with, the parental care that he had to face, everything actually gradually used as a catalyst, ultimately helping him to reach to that destination as a pioneer, as a founder of psychoanalysis. Freud himself declared so many times that this is not the first time that he has contributed in that platform called psychoanalysis, because before Freud, so many other thinkers were also there. But the way Freud could popularize it, they probably was in the process. Freud motivated the whole process in a very successful way, successful path, in a successful journey. And that's why Freud is now a kind of a legendary figure in this arena, in this platform. Freud could gaze himself while in the process of journey through psychoanalysis, he could thought of it well, that this is something that that has a long-term effect on the society, on the culture in general. He himself said so many days ago that I quote Freud here, the future will probably attribute far greater importance to psychoanalysis as the science of the unconscious than as a therapeutic procedure. So this statement of Freud makes it clear that Freud could sense it well, that the future of psychoanalysis is very important. And now in 2021, while we are confined, we are having our classes virtually, when psychiatrists of our time, they are saying that it is also making a very serious effect on our brain, on our mind of all ages. To the kids, it is very serious. To those who are grown-up people, they are also having a bizarre kind of sensation in their mind, being confined forcefully due to COVID-19. And it is also making some serious effect on the psyche, on our human everyday behavior, and it has a long-term effect. And for which probably in coming days, we need to face some serious issues, facing certain, struggle to overcome, that people are really having those problems due to the confinement and due to those forced suppression of feelings. They cannot go out, when people are really trying to go out, but they cannot, because government has imposed certain restrictions and you cannot go out of it, because due to COVID-19, you are living a life that is very restricted in nature. So at this 21st century and forthcoming 22nd century, the platform of psychoanalysis is very promising, and it has a necessity that can never be denied of. We need more and more psychiatrists today. Only because of that, to read in what particular condition people of our time, they are facing due to the heavy pressure on education, due to the rapid and fast life that people of our time are really suffering from. We need counselors who can counsel for a healthy society. So this journey was initiated by Freud so many days ago. Now, we would like to refer a little about Freud's father, who was Mr. Jacob. And Mr. Jacob was a Jewish wool merchant. And already he had an early marriage before he married to Freud's mother. That was the second marriage of Mr. Jacob. And Mr. Jacob was already 40 when the birth of Freud, Sigmund Freud, took place. But the man, Jacob, Freud's father, he is basically seen through the eyes of Sigmund Freud as a man who is, number one, quite remote in nature, and on the other, the man is basically authoritarian in nature. So the authoritarian figure is something that had a very serious impact on the mind of a young boy like Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud later found that those tidbits that everyone receives in daily communication, daily family life, social life, cultural life, those tidbits, those impulses, they play such a very vital role that they get implanted in the brain and it has a long-term effect. So this is how psychoanalysis is a process that helps us to find out how to behave, how to react, so that our kids, our family members, they would not be the sufferer for any rash decision, for any rash communication on our part. On the part of Freud's mother, who was Amelie Nathanson, so Amelie was a very cozy, just like a good nurturer, emotionally very moderate kind of a woman. And so the kind of mother figure, attachment to Amelie that we find on the part of Sigmund Freud. So two very opposite poles, the personality of Jakob and Amelie that Sigmund Freud received in his life as parents. So it also helped Freud later to introspect how the family life responses and influence of the parents, it also played to build up the personality of an individual. If someone is always cowed down, it can have a very an adverse effect on the mind, on the personality of the kids. Since the beginning of Freud's career, we know that he was very promising kind of a student, and Freud had so many sisters. But Freud's father was a kind of a man who had an expectation all the time in the mind that his son will do something great. So this over expectation on Freud put Freud all the time in a pressure. And Freud knew it well how his father had some extra expectation on him. And when Freud was a very little one, and it is a popular story that we know that Freud was allowed to stay alone in a separate room when rest of the sisters, they used to stay together. It may be in a very haphazard manner. It may be in a very troublesome way. But Freud was given access by his father and parents particularly that he should be given a space so that he can think differently, he can think nobly, because Freud will do something great in future. And that was, implemented in his mind. That was something that was hammered in his mind all the time. We know that Sigmund Freud completed his graduation from Spal Gymnasium, and it was in the year 1873. And the career was really bright and great. And we know that he turned to medicine later on. And it was in the University of Vienna. He went on working with some of the leading psychologists of the time. And one of those leading psychologists was Ernest von Bruck, under whose guidance he went and continued his career. And it was very successful one. And we know in 1882, Sigmund Freud entered the General Hospital in Vienna, and he started his career as a clinical assistant over there and was trained under the guidance of some of the psychiatrists of the time, Theodor Maynard in one hand, and on the other we had Professor Hermann Nothungel. So with some leading, psychiatrists, professors, psychologists of the time, Freud's training was in the process. It was in 1885 when Freud was appointed as the lecturer in neuropathology. And he was then attached to some of the researches on brain. And there is a particular part in the brain that we know, and the part is known as the medulla. So Freud worked for a long time what exactly happens inside the brain and how does brain operate, how does brain and the emotion, brain and the psychopathology, all those things are very correlated, and how do our brain works. So everything that he went on researching on this particular portion for a long time. And also at the same time, he was curious to work on the benefits of cocaine. Okay, and this, how does cocaine has a effect on the brain. He continued such kind of researches for a long time. And we later know that, he was more interested in neuropathology later, and he thought that he should need more training in neuropathology. And that's why in 1885, he left Vienna and went to study more and more on neuropathology in Paris. So why are we saying all those data? Only because to have some of the glimpses that to be that of a successful thinker, psychologist later on, Freud had an obsession. Now, Freud was a man who was basically obsessive in nature. Whatever is there in his mind, he was, by any chance, he will be stick to it, and he must make it successful first, and then only he will go on later on. So this obsessiveness is necessary. Probably we come to know through Freud's career that only those persons who want to be successful in their life and career, they has to be very, very obsessive, because without obsession, without that eccentric obsession, one cannot be successful in life. One cannot be successful in his career, and not at all. So Freud, we shouldn't forget that, was a man who was very much obsessive. So he went on in studies of neuropathology in Paris under the guidance of Jean-Martin Charcot, and Charcot's influence was very necessary for Sigmund Freud. So it went on, and we know that the time he spent in Paris was really beneficial, because it was a turning point in his career, and Charcot's influence he never could deny later in his life and career. And then gradually he moved on to some of the other aspects of human behavior, a particular problem he was more exposed to, and this we know, this is hysterics. Now, Freud was getting more interested what exactly hysteria is. How is it happening? Who are the victims? Who are the people suffering from hysteria? What real psychological disorders are taking place? For what particular reason someone is suffering from hysteria? These are the things. And then gradually, it was that long association with Charcot and his long studies in neuropathology in Paris. He came to the conclusion that so long he had thought in mind that everything is in the brain. No. Then for the first time, it became clear to him that those problems of hysteria is actually the result of the mind, not of the brain. Okay? It is the result of the mind and not of the brain that he gradually came to the conclusion, and he came to know all about those aspects gradually. So if this is one part of his academic career, on the other part we know shortly after his return from Paris, Freud got married, okay? But he get very good support from his wife. There is no problem at all. But with his wife, he had many children, but Freud really was happy with one daughter, and she was Anna Freud, who became also a famous psychiatrist of a similar fashion, a woman of repute. And Freud was very happy with his daughter, Anna Freud, later on. Okay. She was also a successful woman in this particular branch. So, so shortly after the marriage, Freud found some of the very good thinkers of that same platform, and he befriended them. One was the Berlin-based physician Wilhelm Fliess. Now, Fliess and Freud had that long association of 15 long years. And in these 15 long years, it was with the hand of Fliess that Freud could gradually have some of the new ideas about human bisexuality. And also some of the erotogenic zones on the human body. What are those erotogenic zones, and how do human beings behave? And some of the notions of sexuality also. It became very helpful to Sigmund Freud when he was working with that Berlin-based physician, his friend Wilhelm Fliess. Now, if it is one part of friendship, the other part of friendship that Sigmund Freud was really beneficial was Joseph Breuer. After his return from Paris, and we also know that these are the post-Paris friendship. And Joseph Breuer and Freud friendship also was very beneficial. And we know it was all about neuropsychology that Breuer and Freud was working together. And, and this is something that together they discussed, they researched, they experimented on hysteria. And whenever we talk of Joseph Breuer and whenever we talk of Sigmund Freud, then we have to mention that before the collaboration between Breuer and Freud began, Breuer was already working on, some of the psychological disorders and was started treating patient. And one of the patient is very popular because this patient is continuously referred to in so many cases. And the name of the patient is Bertha Pappenheim, who had a nickname. And this patient is very popular with the nickname Anna O. So this Anna O is very popular because of that, since she was under treatment and has been referred to in literature. And so Anna had certain historical symptoms. And before the association and the collaboration between Breuer and Sigmund Freud, Breuer was actually treating Anna for a long time. And with some hypnotic suggestion of Charcot, Breuer was always there, analyzing, trying to interpret what is working inside the mind of Anna, and was also applying, auto-hypnosis is a kind of a process, and that was really helpful for Anna at the same time. And Breuer was very, very interested to work with Anna and was trying his best to make Anna, successful and coming out of her from all those psychological disorders. And it was at that very time that for the first time we come to know the process that is called talking cure. What is talking cure? Talking cure is actually a process to apply on the patient who is suffering from some psychological disorder to let him or her speak of her own, and to raising certain issue, the psychologist allows the patient to say all the feelings, all the pent-up emotions, all those blocked areas of the mind which couldn't get any access to come out. In the process called talking cure, we know that the patient goes on saying some of the hidden aspects of the brain, of the mind that she was suffering from. I shouldn't use the word brain, rather it's all about the mind, and all those tidbits, impulses that helped him that was actually instrumental for all the psychological disorders. In the process called talking cure, the patient gradually releases everything that was in his or her mind. So these are the techniques that gradually Sigmund Freud was coming into. And these were all helpful to make a huge database, if we say in our word, a database in Freud's mind, and Freud gradually can now map up a new path, a new journey of psychological analysis, and that helped Freud to manifest, helped Freud to propound his own kind of theory that was landmark in the area of psychological interpretation. And that was something that I would like to convey today in our first talk on Sigmund Freud, and how that intellectual journey happened in so many phases, meeting so many people. We have simplified this journey, this trajectory of Freud, and it's really awe-inspiring. And we have more planned to talk on so many other aspects of Sigmund Freud's psychological theories in coming days. Thank you so much.